Picture this, you're at a Harley-Davidson dealership in 2025, and the salesperson tells you they have an electric motorcycle that costs more than most cars. It has the range of a golf cart and sounds like a dentist drill having an existential crisis. Oh, and they've sold exactly 33 of them all year. Welcome to the LiveWire, the most spectacular failure in motorcycle history that nearly took down America's most legendary bike company. Chapter 1, the genesis of a disaster. Let's rewind to 2014. Harley-Davidson, the company that made motorcycles synonymous with rumbling thunder and leather-clad rebellion, decided to go electric. Yes, you heard that right. The company whose entire identity was built on loud pipes and V-twin engines suddenly wanted to make motorcycles that whisper. The idea seemed fetch at first to bring younger, environmentally conscious riders into the Harley fold. The problem? They forgot to ask if anyone actually wanted a silent Harley. In June 2014, Harley unveiled the LiveWire concept. The LiveWire was first displayed to the media in June 2014, and industry observers called it the most radical departure in the 111-year history of the brand, according to Fox Sports commentators. That should have been their first warning. Here's what's fascinating. The LiveWire wasn't developed in-house. The LiveWire was inspired by the Mission R electric superbike, and the powertrains for the prototypes were developed in collaboration with its manufacturer, the electric motorcycle and electric powertrain company Mission Motors. So Harley's revolutionary electric motorcycle wasn't even their revolution. The development process took 5 years. In January 2018, Harley-Davidson announced that the motorcycle was entering production and would enter the market in 18 months. That timeline should have been another red flag. If it takes you 5 years to electrify a motorcycle, maybe you're not ready for the electric revolution. Chapter 2, Launch Day Disasters. September 2019 arrives and Harley finally launches the LiveWire. The price tag? A jaw-dropping $29,799. Let me put that into perspective for you. You could buy a fully loaded Honda Civic, take a vacation to Europe, and still have money left over for a nice dinner. Or you could buy one electric motorcycle. Here's where it gets delicious. Harley-Davidson has halted production and delivery of its first electric motorcycle, the LiveWire, after discovering what the Milwaukee-based manufacturer described as a non-standard condition during a final quality check. This happened just weeks after launch. The production halt follows a recent report by news agency Reuters, which contacted many of the Harley-Davidson dealers selling the LiveWire and reported that the electric motorcycle is not attracting new customers. Translation: nobody wanted to buy a $30,000 electric Harley that couldn't charge properly. The charging issue was no small problem. Other news outlets reported that the owners who had already taken delivery of LiveWires are being told they can use the DC fast charging option, but not level 1 charging. Imagine buying a $30,000 motorcycle and being told, oh, by the way, you can't charge it at home. Harley described it as an overnight charge, and they're not kidding. A 5% to full charge takes 12 hours and 46 minutes. Your electric car charges faster than this motorcycle. Chapter 3, the numbers don't lie. Let's talk about performance, because this is where reality gets brutal. The result? A possible 80-mile range in road mode. For a $29,799 MSRP motorcycle, excuse me in my criticism, but that is a joke, wrote one motorcycle journalist after testing the bike. Harley-Davidson claims the LiveWire will run for 235 kilometers in the city and 152 on the open road at 110 kilometers an hour off a full charge. That's about 94 miles in the city and a measly 94 miles on the highway. Most gas motorcycles can go 200 to 300 miles on a tank. But wait, there's more. With a base price of $29,799, the LiveWire is nearly $10,000 more than a top-of-the-line Zero with the most expensive option boxes ticked. Zero Motorcycles has been making electric bikes for years with better range and lower prices. Harley was charging a $10,000 premium for what? The badge? Now let's talk about the weight. On paper, the LiveWire electric motorcycle may appear heavy, lacking battery range, and short on power and torque. It was heavier than most sport bikes, but had the range of a city scooter. Chapter 4, the sales catastrophe. Here's where the story gets truly spectacular. Reuters spoke with 40 of the 150 dealerships selling the bike, and it learned the majority of LiveWire buyers are existing Harley riders, not the young, hip, and wealthy first-timers the company was hoping to attract. The new riders who inquired about the bike lost interest in it after they learned it costs as much as a nicely equipped family crossover. A New Jersey dealer summed it up perfectly. Interest is very high, but once you get to the pricing, interest is thrown out the window. The sales numbers tell the complete story. After initially selling less than 400 electric motorcycles in 2021, the company boldly predicted this last spring that sales would increase to over 100,000 by 2026. They went from selling 400 bikes to predicting 100,000. That's not optimism, that's delusion. By 2024, reality hit hard. From its beginning in 2021 to the present, the company has only sold around 2,300 motorcycles total. In 3 years, they sold fewer LiveWires than most dealers sell regular Harleys in a month. Only 60 of the company's 550 dealers even carry LiveWire bikes. Even Harley's own dealers didn't believe in its product. Chapter 5, the SPAC disaster. By 2021, Harley-Davidson decided the solution to their electric motorcycle problem was, wait for it, to spin it off as its own company, because nothing says confidence in your product like literally giving it away. In December 2021, Harley-Davidson Inc. on Tuesday spun off its electric motorcycle division, LiveWire, in a SPAC deal, creating the first publicly traded electric motorcycle company in the United States. The valuation? A staggering $1.77 billion merger with a blank check firm. CEO Jochen Zeitz was practically giddy about the deal. He told CNBC, "Well, it's a great opportunity. This is really a win-win-win for everybody involved. I've been involved in this process for 10 years, pushing very hard to think long-term and think electrification. 10 years of development, a $1.77 billion valuation, and they'd sold about as many motorcycles as a typical dealership moves in a busy weekend." The SPAC launched on September 27, 2022. New shares of LiveWire Group Inc. were down 6.2% in afternoon trading after surging 24% in early market trading in its U.S. market debut on Tuesday. The stock went up and then immediately crashed. It was like a metaphor for the entire project. But here's this truly spectacular part. The initial investors who propped up the EV maker with a $400 million investment per ride apart have withdrawn $370 million and left the company with just a tiny fraction of its startup funds. Let me repeat that. The investors put in $400 million, took a look at LiveWire's business plan, and immediately pulled out $370 million. That's not a vote of confidence. That's a stampede for the exits. The LiveWire offering only garnered $294 million in cash proceeds compared to its initial $545 million projection. They missed their funding target by nearly half. Chapter 6, the financial hemorrhaging. Harley-Davidson pitched in $100 million when LiveWire went public, but now that investors are pulling out their funds, Harley wanted to make up for the loss by pumping another $100 million into LiveWire. Harley originally planned to retain 74% ownership of LiveWire, but the MoCo now owns nearly 90% of LiveWire's shares. They spun off the company to reduce their exposure, only to end up owning more of it than when they started. The financial bleeding continued relentlessly. LiveWire tanked both in its year-over-year quarterly and full-year results. Revenue dropped 32% quarter-over-quarter, while for the full year, revenue dropped 31%. Here's a number that should make your jaw drop. LiveWire's STACYC children's balance bike segment contributed $26.5 million of the company's full-year revenue of $38 million. Without STACYC, LiveWire's full-year revenue would have been a measly $11.5 million. Think about that. LiveWire, the future of motorcycling, was making twice as much money selling kids' balance bikes as actual motorcycles. You couldn't write comedy this good. Chapter 7, the 2025 Apocalypse. If you thought 2024 was bad, 2025 turned into a complete catastrophe. LiveWire, the experiment that emerged as an alternative to their classic bikes, has sold only 33 bikes in the first quarter of 2025, 72% less than last year. And of course, it has set off alarm bells in the company. When doing the math, they have lost $20 million. 33 motorcycles in 3 months. Each of those 33 bikes cost LiveWire roughly $606,000 in losses after factoring in operational costs. Yes, you read that correctly. Each motorcycle they sold cost them over $500,000 in losses. Meanwhile, their combustion models have held up with 38,000 units delivered in the same period. Regular Harleys outsold LiveWires by more than 1,000 to 1. The company kept making optimistic projections. LiveWire and Harley-Davidson are again projecting an increase in the number of electric motorcycles they will sell in 2025. This time, LiveWire and Harley-Davidson are saying they will sell between 1,000 and 1,500 motorcycles. If that sounds familiar, it's because that's what LiveWire and Harley-Davidson said in 2023 after telling investors in 2022 they would sell somewhere between 750 and 2,000 bikes. They've been making the same promises for 3 years while selling fewer bikes each year. Chapter 8, the identity crisis. What makes the story even more fascinating is the psychological aspect. Harley-Davidson built their entire brand on loud pipes, chrome, and the rumble of a V-twin engine. Then they created a motorcycle that sounds like a hairdryer and accelerates like a golf cart on steroids. What Harley is attempting to do is to appeal to 2 totally different customer segments, something AC/DC would never do. Harley-Davidson making an electric motorcycle is tantamount to AC/DC performing a ballad, wrote one industry observer. The comparison is perfect. Imagine going to see AC/DC and they come out with acoustic guitars singing love ballads. That's exactly what Harley did to their brand identity. Motorcycles, by their very nature, are supposed to make noise. Maybe they could sell an accessory that includes a fitment to hold a car that flutters back and forth over the spokes when the wheels are in motion, like we did as kids on our Schwinn bicycles. Even Harley's own customers were confused. One writer said, LiveWire feels like a Tesla wearing a leather jacket. Cool, but not really Harley. Chapter 9, the CEO's blame game. Throughout this disaster, CEO Jochen Zeitz kept making excuses. In May 2025, during the Harley-Davidson annual shareholders meeting, the brand CEO and LiveWire group chairman blamed a lack of charging infrastructure and slower than expected EV adoption for LiveWire's ongoing woes. Charging infrastructure? Really? In case you've forgotten, the original MSRP of the Harley-Davidson LiveWire was $29,799 at its debut just 5 years ago. Adjusted for inflation, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator tells me that's equivalent to about $37,000 in April 2025 money. You're selling a $37,000 motorcycle with an 80-mile range and you blame charging infrastructure? Zeitz had been championing electrification for years. In a 2021 CNBC interview, he said, well, you know, electrification is a given. The future will be electrified also in motorcycling. He also claimed the LiveWire was the best product out there, the best electric product. If it was the best electric product, why was it losing to kids' balance bikes in sales? Chapter 10, the broader Harley disaster. The LiveWire failure didn't happen in isolation. It was part of a broader corporate catastrophe at Harley-Davidson. Harley-Davidson's 2024 revenue of $5.18 billion represents an 11% decrease from 2023. For the full year, consolidating operating income was down 47% compared to the last year. Harley-Davidson is not alone in facing industry headwinds, but the size of its drop, especially compared to rivals, makes clear that this isn't just a tough economy, it's a company in trouble. The company was hemorrhaging money on multiple fronts. Harley-Davidson ended 2024 with major financial losses, reporting a $116.9 million drop in fourth quarter earnings. Even worse, during its annual meeting, Harley-Davidson announced that CEO and Chairman Jochen Zeitz and 2 board members were re-elected. But, according to a source with knowledge of the results, they won by slim margins. Zeitz only survived by a razor-thin margin, with 48% of shareholders voting to withhold. Half of the shareholders wanted to fire their own CEO. That's not a vote of confidence, that's barely surviving a corporate coup. Chapter 11, the dealer rebellion. The dealer network, Harley's lifeblood, was furious. Lifelong Harley fan Jeffrey Duro traded in his bike for an Indian motorcycle, citing frustration with the company's policies and direction. When your customers are switching to your biggest competitor, you have a problem. Navy veteran Donnie Samega says Harley is losing its identity, claiming new models look more like BMWs and Indians than classic Harleys. Even veterans, traditionally Harley's most loyal customer base, were abandoning the brand. Many pushed back when Harley launched an online used bike marketplace that bypassed them. Others were frustrated when promised support didn't materialize during the downturn. The dealers weren't just angry about LiveWire, they were angry about everything. The company had alienated the very people who sold their motorcycles. Chapter 12, the numbers that tell the story. Let me give you some numbers that perfectly capture this disaster. Development time, 10 years. Original price, $29,799, equivalent to $37,000 today. Total LiveWires sold since 2019, about 2,300 motorcycles. Q1 2025 sales, 33 motorcycles. Q1 2025 losses, $20 million, $606,000 per bike lost. SPAC investor withdrawals, $370 million out of the $400 million in. Percentage of Harley dealers selling LiveWire, 60 out of 550, only 11%. Range, 80 miles in real-world conditions, and the charging time, nearly 13 hours from 5% to full. Since its launch in 2019, LiveWire has sold fewer than 3,000 bikes in total worldwide. To put that in perspective, Harley-Davidson sold 49,600 motorcycles in the third quarter, or over 3,800 a week. LiveWire sold fewer motorcycles in 5 years than regular Harley sales in a week. Chapter 13, the technology that wasn't ready. Here's what's particularly damning. The technology problems were obvious from day one. The most prominent issue is the charging problem that has led Harley-Davidson recalling all 2020 LiveWire motorcycles manufactured within a specific date range. This recall was a result of an issue with an onboard charging system that caused a power loss. Furthermore, there have been instances where the LiveWire bikes failed to communicate effectively with certain charging stations. This problem, coupled with the limited number of CCS chargers available in some areas, can make charging the LiveWire a challenging task. The motorcycle couldn't reliably charge at home or at public charging stations. For a $30,000 electric vehicle, that's not a bug, that's a fundamental design failure. Chapter 14, the spin-off that backfired. The decision to spin off LiveWire was supposed to solve multiple problems. The LiveWire brand was spun off so Harley could concentrate on its core base. Zeitz didn't want the LiveWire brand to seem like an afterthought. But the spin-off created new problems. After what I'd call the bungling and failure of the LiveWire launch, the brand's executives decided that the real problem was Harley's core demographic wasn't interested in electrics, the more modern styling of the LiveWire, and its Harley branding was hurting LiveWire sales with the youths. So they removed the Harley branding to appeal to young people, then wondered why people didn't want to pay $30,000 for a motorcycle from a brand they've never heard of. Even more confounding, these two definitely not Harley-Davidsons look exactly like Harley-Davidsons. They removed the branding but kept the styling, creating maximum confusion in the marketplace. Chapter 15, the final nail. By 2025, even CEO Zeitz was ready to admit defeat. In April 2025, Zeitz announced his intention to retire from Harley-Davidson after 5 years as CEO, subject to the appointment of a suitable successor. The man who championed electrification for 10 years, who spun off LiveWire as a separate company, who predicted 100,000 annual sales, was stepping down after selling 33 motorcycles in the first quarter. Harley CEO Jochen Zeitz bluntly stated the company won't invest another dime beyond an existing $100 million credit line. Translation? You're on your own, kid. The parent company was cutting off funding to its electric subsidiary. After investing hundreds of millions of dollars over a decade, Harley was essentially abandoning the electric motorcycle market. Chapter 16, the competition that actually worked. While Harley was failing spectacularly with LiveWire, Other companies were succeeding with electric motorcycles. Zero Motorcycles, the company Harley should have been studying, was selling thousands of bikes annually at lower prices with better performance. With a base price of $29,799, the LiveWire is nearly $10,000 more than the top-of-the-line Zero with the most expensive option boxes. Zero was doing everything Harley wasn't: reasonable pricing, functional range, reliable charging, and targeting the right customers. But Harley thought they could charge a premium for their badge. They forgot that electric motorcycle buyers cared more about performance and value than heritage and chrome. Chapter 17, What Went Wrong? This wasn't just a product failure, it was a masterclass in corporate incompetence. Let's count the ways Harley screwed this up. 1. Price point insanity. They priced the bike for dentists, but marketed it to millennials with student loans. 2. Technology problems. 5 years of development and the bike couldn't charge properly. Number 3, range anxiety. 80 miles of real-world range for a company whose customers expect to ride across the country. 4, identity crisis. They tried to make a silent Harley for people who don't like Harleys. 5, market misunderstanding. They thought young people wanted expensive electric motorcycles instead of affordable transportation. 6, dealer neglect. Only 11% of dealers carried the product. 7, financial desperation. The SPAC deal was a Hail Mary that failed spectacularly. And 8, executive delusion. 10 years of optimistic projections contradicted by reality. Chapter 18, The Lessons. The LiveWire disaster teaches us several important lessons about business innovation and knowing your customer. Lesson 1, brand identity matters. You can't abandon everything that makes your brand special and expect customers to follow you. Lesson 2, technology has to work. A $30,000 motorcycle that can't charge reliably isn't innovative, it's broken. Lesson 3, price has to match value. You can't charge luxury prices for mediocre performance. Lesson 4, know your customer. Harley's customers want loud pipes and long rides, not quiet commutes and range anxiety. And lesson 5, don't believe your own hype. Just because you want something to succeed doesn't mean it will. The $200 million question. So what did LiveWire really cost Harley-Davidson? Beyond the direct losses, beyond the SPAC failure, beyond the investor flight, the real cost was opportunity and reputation. What happened is that Harley caved to the climate alarmists and embarrassed their loyal customer base that they have built over the last 100 years. They damaged the relationship with the customers who actually buy their motorcycles while chasing customers who don't exist. The LiveWire failure represents something larger. What happens when a company abandons its core identity in pursuit of a trend? Harley-Davidson spent over a decade and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to become something they weren't, and in the process, they nearly forgot what they were. As of 2025, LiveWire's future hangs in the balance with 4 possible outcomes: niche survival, external investment, acquisition, or a slow fade into bankruptcy. But here's the ultimate irony. When LiveWire was failing spectacularly, regular Harley-Davidson motorcycles kept selling. Their combustion models have held up with 38,000 units delivered in the same period that LiveWire sold just 33. Maybe, just maybe, customers knew what they wanted all along: loud pipes, chrome, and the freedom of the open road. Sometimes the oldest ideas are still the best ones. The LiveWire wasn't a motorcycle failure. It was a $200 million reminder that you can't engineer soul into a spreadsheet, and you can't silence thunder and call it progress. In the end, Harley-Davidson learned the most expensive lesson in corporate history. Being Harley-Davidson was enough. They just forgot to believe it.